Okay, good morning, everybody. And the today's topic is something which is relevant to each and every one of us in our lives, because we cannot have small or big stresses are part of normal life. So let's see how we can manage our stress better. I'm Dr. Tulika Shukla. I am an MD psychiatry and a DHA certified psychiatrist at Millennium Medical Center, Dubai. So the outline of today's presentation would be, first of all, understanding stress. Then we'll discuss strategies to manage stress. And lastly, there will be a homework for all of you. When we talk about understanding stress, first we need to understand what is stress. What is this term eustress? Then we need to understand how do we identify that we are stressed out. And lastly, how do we classify these stresses? What is stress? Well, stress is our body's response to anything that requires attention or action. It can be from your environment or from inside yourself, or it can be real or perceived. What does that mean? It basically means that anything that is happening in our environment, which we need to attend to immediately, will generate a stress response in us. When I say it can be from your environment, take an example of a vehicle approaching you. You're trying to cross the road and a vehicle is approaching you. If you don't immediately step out of the way, you will have an accident. This is an example. This is a stressor. This is where you can immediately see how something is an imminent danger to you and you need to take action quickly. Now, all of us are not in similar situations all the time. But still, this is what the mechanism is. Looking at how it can be from inside yourself. If I have an exam tomorrow, or if I have a big meeting tomorrow and I'm not prepared for it, my body is going to tell me, my brain is going to tell me that there is something important that you need to address. And that would generate stress in me. Similarly, this stress, the threat that I'm perceiving in my surroundings, can be real or it can be perceived. For example, a meeting tomorrow is a real threat. I do have a meeting tomorrow and I do have to prepare for it. If I don't prepare for it, I will not be able to present anything. Similarly, if there is a car coming towards me, it is a real threat. A perceived threat is that if I do not do well in an exam tomorrow, I will be a failure all over for my entire life. That is a perceived threat. Even if you don't do well in one exam, it is not necessary that your whole life is over. But then if that kind of thought process is going on, it is a perceived threat. A lot of times when we don't know what we are dealing with, when there is a lot of uncertainty, that is also perceived as a threat. Our brain likes to know what is going on around us. Coming to the stress response that I talked about, whenever we are faced with a threat, our sympathetic nervous system, which is an automatic system, generates something called as a stress response, which basically is dryness of mouth, increased heart rate, sweating, feeling of anxiety, feeling that you immediately need to take action. Threat, at the same time, what happens once this threat is gone? Once the threat is gone, the parasympathetic nervous system takes over and it brings back your body to the relaxed state. So stress response basically enables us to physically fight or run away when faced with danger. It provides us the fight or flight response. And when the perceived threat is gone, systems are designed to return to normal via the relaxation response. The way you perceive threat and respond to stress, however, make a big difference to your overall well-being. Stress, like I said, you cannot eliminate stress from your life. It is a normal part of life. It is very understandable for us that negative life events like illness, the loss of a loved one can cause stress. But even positive life events like marriage, birth of a child, a promotion can also cause stress. Any major transitions in life can bring stress. This is a very important point to see here because a lot of times what happens is that we only talk about stress in terms of bad things happening to us. When something big and important and positive happens to us, we think it cannot be associated with stress. Why are you stressed? You just had a child. Let's talk about eustress. Well, all stress is not bad. Some stress is important in our lives as it gives us an opportunity for growth in our skills and personality. So every time for example, you graduate and go to a senior class, you are expected to improve on your skills. You are expected to increase your knowledge. It is a stress. You have to study harder, you have to do more, but then it will help you grow. So distress is something where you're feeling overwhelmed, when you feel oppressed, and you feel behind in your responsibilities. It is a sense that you are being imposed with difficulties and there is no hope of improvement. On the other hand, eustress is positive and beneficial. One feels challenged, but at the same time, the sources of stress are meaningful to you. So you see them as an opportunity of growth. So I like to explain stress to all my clients by using something called as a collapsing bridge analogy. If a bridge is carrying too much weight, it will eventually collapse. But there will be warning signs before this happens. The bridge would bow, buckle, and creak. What does that mean? That if there is a bridge and you only load it with amount of weight that it can take, there will not be much of a problem. If you don't take care of the bridge, if you don't look into the wear and tear of the bridge, there will be a problem. If you don't ensure that whatever is the carrying capacity of the bridge, you keep only that much weight, there will be a problem. The same principle can be applied to human beings. This is when excessive demands and challenges are placed on us. So stress occurs when the demands exceed resources. So if you want to manage stress, very simply put, you either need to lower the demand or you need to increase your resources. Let's start. If you want to manage stress, before managing it, you need to first of all identify that you are stressed out. How do I know that I am experiencing stress? And how do I know what is triggering my stress? Some of the common signs of stress are cognitively, there will be forgetfulness, inability to concentrate. This is a very common symptom where people will say that I am not able to concentrate on my work. Brain fog. Brain fog, you can understand by that I'm looking at my work, but I'm not able to process what I have to do. I'm not able to process information. Self-doubt. They will be constantly questioning their decision-making. They will become very indecisive. Whether this is the right thing to do, should I do this, should I do that, should I use this method, that ways. And worrying and overthinking. If you're very stressed out, you will have, in trying to solve a problem, you will think about it constantly without coming up with the solution. Emotionally, what will the person feel? The person can feel down or can feel sad. They might feel overwhelmed and frustrated. They might feel anxious or nervous about something. Sometimes there can be irritability. You are irritable and you don't realize why I'm being irritable. I'm snapping at everybody. And lastly, an inability to relax. You sit down, you know you're very stressed out, but you're trying to relax yourself, but despite that, you're not able to relax. Physically, what will happen when a person is stressed? Excessive sweating can be there, chest pain and palpitations, nausea, dizziness and headaches, aches and pains, indigestion. These are just some of the physical symptoms. What will you see in the behavior of a person who is stressed out? There can be changes in their appetite, the increase as well as decrease, sudden changes in their appetite. They will have a lot of nervous habits. They will be pacing around the room. They will be very fidgety. There can be sleep disturbances. You're trying to sleep, but then overthinking is happening and you cannot fall asleep. Or you're getting up early in the morning with some nightmares and then you're unable to fall asleep again. Like you get up early in the sense like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Excessive use of alcohol or drugs. This is another coping mechanism that people use, a maladaptive coping mechanism that people use when they're very stressed out. They resort to taking alcohol or other substances to make them feel calm. Another behavior which is very common when you are stressed out is procrastination. You know you have to finish a task, but it is so overwhelming that you don't do it. And then that adds to the cycle of feeling stressed. So now that you know these symptoms of stress, if you can identify that, yes, I am going through some of these things, it is important to understand what is making you stressed, what is making you feel this way, or what is making you do these behaviors. Stressful things can be stressful for some, while it can be very easy for others. For example, workplace issues can be stressful for some people, classes, studying, relationship with your closed ones, change of environment in the form of change of your residence or change of your school, change in the amount of social activity you used to get. For example, during COVID, we were all so used to socializing, going out and meeting with our friends. That sudden restriction of our social activities was a big stress for most of the people. Similarly, childcare, financial problems, issues regarding your appearance, issues regarding your physical health. If you have a chronic illness, something like diabetes or hypertension, or a painful condition like arthritis, that can add to your stress. This feeling, a lot of times, of not fitting in, like I said, any sudden changes in lifestyle in the form of change in your eating habits, if there are ongoing legal matters, chronic illness, injury, you can be stressed about religious and spiritual issues. You might have a lot of questions. If you have to make major career decisions that are going to impact your entire life, sometimes even your own attitudes and thoughts can be responsible for stress. So stressful situations are always going to come and go, but how you react to them, how you think about them, is also a very important step in managing stress. Lastly, very serious issues like having a very traumatic experience or death of a very important person in your life can also add to stress. So how do you identify and how do you find out what is causing my stress? Why am I irritable the entire day? Well, the first step to understand your stress, you can, sometimes it is very easy. Sometimes it is very obvious that, okay, this is what I'm stressed about. Sometimes if you're not able to pick up, you can use something called as a stress log. So every time you are experiencing stress or you're feeling overwhelmed, write down the time, write down what were the symptoms that you were experiencing from this chart that I just mentioned, whatever you were experiencing. Then rate it on a scale of 0 to 10. How stressed were you feeling? Following that, write about what caused it. Because when you're experiencing it, if you sit down and think about it, if you're not able to say what caused it, you can tell what happened exactly before you started feeling this way. For example, you were in your office and you were sitting on your desk, and then you started experiencing anxiety. What could have caused it? So it is very easy to we have very easy access to our emotions, but our thoughts and our behaviors are not that easily visible to us. How do you make it more apparent? Whatever emotions you are experiencing, if you write it down and you try to understand what happened just before this, what made me feel this way. So you will realize that I had 2 files with me that I had to complete, and half an hour back, 5 more files were given to me. I was already not able to finish the previous 2, and now I have 7 files. This is what has led to my anxiety, that this is overwhelming for me. I'm not able to complete this. So this exercise, maintaining a stress log, will make it very apparent to you that what is the creating factor for your stress. So what does a stress log do? It helps you identify and understand your stress experiences. It builds awareness of how you react to stress. It also reveals the common themes and circumstances associated with your experience of and reaction to stress. and informs your next step in learning how to manage stress based on your strengths and challenges. Now, once you have made your stress log or you have identified what is causing your stress, you need to classify these causes into 3 A's. Whether I can alter this situation, whether I can avoid this situation, or can I accept this situation? Then you will only, so once you have done this classification, then only you will know what technique should I use to manage this. Coming to managing stress, there are different techniques that I will be talking about one by one. Everyday strategies to reduce stress. How do you change your environment to reduce stress? Physical relaxation techniques, cognitive techniques, and lastly, the communication techniques. Okay, so first and foremost, a lot of times we are feeling stressed because our sugar levels are not managed. We are hungry and then we've not had anything since morning, and then whatever we are trying to do, our brain is not able to process and we feel irritable. So having a well-balanced diet, making sure you're hydrated, making sure you have slept well the previous day are very important to have a good day. Similarly, exercising regularly so that you have an active schedule, using routines to reduce stress. What does that mean? There are certain things we need to do every day. For example, your laundry, your shopping, your grocery shopping. You have to involve them as a routine that, yeah, I am going to do this every Tuesday, like that. And then if you stick to your routines, if you have a routine in place, you will not have so many problems. You'll know when do you have to do what. Similarly, always keeping some time in your day to decompress. Talking with your friends and peers. So if I'm having a day-to-day issue in my life, talking to my friends and peers about it and talking to my family members about it might really help. But at the same time, if you're going to have hurtful conversations with your people, if you're going to complain to them and you're going to tell them what is wrong with them, that is a very different kind of communication. So the kind of communication you are having with your family members or your friends is also very important. Similarly, you can also pair enjoyable activities or tasks with less enjoyable activities. For example, you can pair, cleaning the dishes with listening to music, or you can reward yourself for a job well done. So in your routine, if you have done something well, you can reward yourself in a small way. These are everyday strategies that if we follow this in our lifestyle, it will overall take away a lot of sources of stress. Coming to specific relaxation techniques. So at many times we are completely aware that, for example, we had a big argument with a colleague at our workplace, and we know that we are in a very bad mood because of that. It will help to find a sanctuary at that. You know, you don't want to handle it right now. You don't want to bring it back home. So finding a sanctuary at a time like this can help. It can be your own room. It can be a library. It can be a park. Anything that you find relaxing where you can let go of disturbing thoughts. Secondly, you can use things that you enjoy. For example, your hobbies like music or art, or dance, any form of hobby that you enjoy, to allow yourself to engage in a enjoyable activity so that your stress levels come down. Third technique could be seeing the humor, which basically means that you can talk about it and joke about the situation, and you will be a little lighter about. So you know that you had a fight with a colleague, and all you can do is you can joke about it and let it go. Let's look at physical ways of relaxing yourself. If you're feeling very stressed out, if you're feeling very anxious, you can practice deep breathing. You can practice something called as progressive muscle relaxation. You can do stretching exercises in yoga. You can practice meditation. So all these physical relaxation techniques you can learn and use if this helps you in lowering your stress levels. These are things you can do in terms of changing your behaviors. If you want to alter your stress levels, these are behavioral things that you can do. Let's talk about controlled or deep breathing. It is a very simple and effective way of controlling your stress levels. It can be done anytime, anywhere. If you're feeling stressed out before a presentation, if you're feeling stressed out in your office, in your home, controlled breathing can help you calm down. What is the process of deep breathing? You place one hand on your stomach and one hand on your chest. Breathe in with your stomach expanding outward. This is called as a belly breathe. Put your hand on your stomach. The hand which is on your stomach should move up. And after taking the breath, hold it for some time. Then gradually breathe out through your mouth more slowly than you were breathing in. And at this time, your belly should go inside. Your hand on your stomach should move back. Now, the hand on the chest is to stabilize you and it should not move. You can add a count to this. So for three counts, you are breathing in, you're holding for 4 counts, and then you're breathing out through your mouth for 5 counts. Practice this 5 to 6 times with your eyes closed in a comfortable position. You can lie down or you can do it sitting. And this will immediately help your anxiety levels to come down. Let's talk about progressive muscle relaxation. This is when you can feel that your muscles are very tensed up because you're very stressed. One by one, gradually from head to toe, you will be tensing a group of muscles, holding them in a state of extreme tension for a few seconds and then relax. If you want to do this process, so there are a lot of progressive muscle relaxation scripts available on YouTube. You can, I have given one link, which was a decent one that I found, but there are many others available. So any medical or any psychotherapist guided PMR videos, you can use for that. Coming to cognitive techniques. Now we have discussed about how can you change your environment? How can you change your routine? How can you change, how can you do certain behavioral activities to manage your stress? But a lot of times, stress is being triggered from what is going on here in your brain. It is important to understand the link between your thoughts, behavior, and emotions. It is important to understand the role of control in stress creation and reduction. And it is very important to understand your personal role in stress creation and reduction. So it is important to understand here that stress is also coming from your perception of the situation. There are certain unhelpful ways of perceiving and thinking about situations which contribute to stress. It is important to understand that your thoughts affect your behavior, your emotions affect your behavior, and your emotions and your thoughts are also affecting each other. So all these 3 things are affecting the other. What are unhelpful patterns of thinking? So a few examples I have kept. This is actually understanding unhelpful patterns of thinking, what is happening at the level of thought. It is not very easily accessible. You need to sometimes be in therapy and follow principles in therapy that are being taught in order to identify these patterns of thinking. So a few examples that I have kept here, which you can maybe pick up in your daily life, are catastrophization. For example, if your child is late from school, you start thinking that he must have had an accident. Now, if you think that your child is late because probably the bus, the tire of the bus is flat and maybe that's why the child is late, you will not be very anxious. But if you start thinking that my child is late, have they met with an accident, you will obviously be very anxious. So this process of catastrophization, that if something is going wrong, something very bad must have happened, is going to make you more anxious. All or none phenomena. If I don't work out every day, then I'm not fit. So there is no in between. You are either successful or it is a failure. There is no in between that, okay, this was not 100 on 100, but yeah, it was still 60 on 100. So this all or none way of thinking about things, that if I could not complete the task fully, it means that this task is a failure. A third one, which is very commonly used, that we all do probably in our daily lives, is jumping to conclusions. They did not invite me, they probably hate me. So what did we do? We just looked at one behavior that happened and we made our own conclusions. We didn't actually clarify. We didn't actually talk about it. We just jumped to a conclusion based on something that we observed. Mislabeling. Just on the basis of one or two things that have happened, you start labeling a person that you are lazy because you come late, or you label yourself, I am stupid because I cannot get marks. So this mislabeling is also something very commonly people do. Should statements, that things should happen in a particular way, or people should behave in a particular way. If they don't do it, it's not acceptable. So you should have done this, but you didn't. Now you will, I know when you people, when you're listening to this, you will be like, what is wrong with this? This is, I mean, when people should have done something, they should have done something. The problem here is not what they should and should not have done. The problem here is by sticking to these should statements, or by sticking to this jumping to conclusion method of thinking, you are only increasing your stress. You are not actually coming up with a solution. So like I said, sometimes it is very easy to pick up these unhelpful patterns of thoughts, but sometimes a more structured approach is required to identify and then challenge these cognitive distortions. Some of the cognitive techniques that you can practice are that if you realize that, yes, I'm using some of these things, for example, I'm catastrophizing, you need to break the cognitive distortion cycle. You need to get back on track, notice your thoughts, and start using a trigger word to stop the thoughts. For example, in this example, they have taken something as the word stop itself. So if you are constantly getting the thought, there is no point in trying, I am definitely going to fail, you tell yourself stop. And then you have to focus on what is a helpful thought. This situation could be easier if I first focus on this area. So for example, you have an exam tomorrow, you have not studied, and you only have 3 hours to study. You are constantly thinking, your brain is constantly going there, that there is no point in studying now. Anyways, I'm going to fail. You have still not failed. So you know that it is not the truth. You have to actively tell yourself to stop, and you will have to focus on that this situation will get easier. If I study for 3 hours, there is still a possibility that I'll be able to cover some of my syllabus and maybe not get the best marks, but then at least I can pass. This is just an example. You can use it in your own lives. Cognitive techniques of positive self-statements. You have to, whenever you are getting overwhelmed by critical self-talk, negative self-talk, you can replace it with repetitive positive and motivating statements in your day-to-day life. For example, instead of saying I need to be perfect or I fail, you can replace it by saying I did a great job learning this new curriculum. What they're trying to say is that if you are going to learn something new, you're trying to learn a new chapter, if you are thinking that I need to learn this chapter perfectly, otherwise this is a failure, you can replace it by saying that I am doing a good job learning this chapter. What is the role of control? Now, so we have discussed so far how to pick up unhelpful things that we are telling ourselves in our minds and how do we replace them. These are not all the techniques that are there. There are very many techniques. There are many other, there is something called as cognitive restructuring, which is done systematically in therapy to challenge all these cognitive distortions. This is what the premise of CBT is. Coming to another way of handling your stressful situations is to understand what is the role of control in stress reduction. We are in control of our thoughts and reactions. It is possible to reduce our personal stress by first of all recognizing what is in our control and what is out of our control. Then we can consciously shift and focus our attention and energy on what is in our control and let go of what is out of our control. So whenever we are in a stressful situation, we need to understand what are the things I can control and what are the things I cannot control. For example, if my boss has come and yelled at me today for doing a job badly, I can focus on my ability to prioritize my work and my personal obligation. I can focus on my reaction to the event and to people, and I can focus on my thoughts. What can I not focus on? I cannot focus on how people are responding to me. I cannot control how other people are feeling and what other people are saying. I can control my behavior. I cannot control their behavior. What will happen if you are going to focus on what is under your control? You will feel empowered and you will feel relief. If you will focus on things that you cannot control, you will feel hopeless because you will keep telling them to change. You will keep expecting them to change and nothing will really happen. You will feel anxious because you are not in control of what you can do, and you will feel powerless. So this is a very good exercise whenever you're feeling stressed, especially in interpersonal situations, or when you are facing situations where there are too many factors in the external environment. You can focus on what you can do to make it better, and then the rest of it you will have to let go. Lastly, coming to another very important technique of problem solving. So far, we have talked about how do you let go of situations. Let's understand that when you want to take a problem head on, what do? Worrying and overthinking about a problem is not going to come up with a solution. What you need to do is have something called as solution focused thinking. In order to find a solution, you first need to define your problem clearly. Exactly what is causing my problem. For example, if I go back to the example of my boss yelling at me, the problem is that a particular task was not completed, and that is what led to my boss giving me a negative feedback. Why was it not completed on time? There will be XYZ reasons, and there would be some issue with the time management. So now you know what the problem was. The problem was not that your boss is a bad person. The problem was that some task was not completed on time. Then comes the question of generation of alternative solutions. How do I do this on time? So why did it not happen on time? It could be because you have too much on your plate. It could be because you were doing somebody else's work. It could be because you are having a problem at home and you're not able to give that much time to your work. Or it could be that you were distracted because of some reason or the other. In that case, understanding what caused your problem, and then you find alternative solutions to it. So depending upon what caused the problem, for example, you have too much on your plate, you will have to learn to delegate. So generation of alternative solutions to handle the problem. Lastly, deliberative decision making. So you will have to consciously do some decision making here, that yes, this is something I will have to address and I will have to prioritize. And then implementation of the chosen solution. So this is what we use for a structured problem solving exercise. You write down your problem or worry, you brainstorm potential solutions, you look at the pros and cons of the solutions, then you pick out best to worst. Sometimes there might not be the ideal solution. You see what can be done best. So least to best, you classify those problem solving solutions. And then in order to do, you choose which solution, which decision I'm going to make. The deliberate decision making needs to happen. This is the strategy I'm going to follow. And then use concrete steps. In order to do this, what should I be doing? Step number 1, 2, 3. So if I want to summarize the cognitive techniques that we have discussed so far in order to manage your stress better, you need to recognize that thoughts impact your behavior and emotions. The connection between thoughts, behavior, and emotion needs to be kept in mind. You need to talk back to your unhelpful thoughts. You need to focus on what is in your control and use solution-focused thinking. Lastly, a lot of times, a lot of stress in our lives is happening because of the way we are communicating with other people and the way other people are communicating with us. So there are few techniques you can practice, so which will lower your stress levels and improve your communication. One of the techniques you use in communication is active listening, which involves listening to the content of the conversation as well as feelings and the non-verbal cues within the message. So active listening means with my complete attention, I focus on what is the content of the message and what are the non-verbal cues that I'm getting from the communication. After the person has finished speaking, I paraphrase, I repeat what I have understood in 1 or 2 points back to the person to give them feedback that I understood what you have just told me. So for example, in this example, if you see what they have, the speaker comes and says, I finally finished all of my work. The listener says, oh, good. Now you can clean up. Now you can help me clean up. What happened here? This person has said, I finally finished all of my work, which basically means they are feeling relieved that they had so much work and they have just finished it. Now, if I turn around and tell them, okay, good, now you help me also, they are already feeling tired. What would an active listener say? You must feel relieved. That was a lot of work. So probably active listening is a skill that all of us can pick up with practice and then paraphrase back to the person we are talking to so that the other person feels more heard. What would happen in the first situation when the listener says, oh, good, now you can help clean up? The speaker is going to get angry that I just finished so much of my work and now you're telling me to clean up. What will happen in the second situation? They might actually, they will feel good about it. They will feel happy that they are getting a compliment. And at the same time, they might actually actively go and say that, okay, I can see you are cleaning up. Let me help you also. Although I have just finished a lot of work, but the appreciation will encourage them to automatically come and ask for more work. Empathetic responses. When you are communicating with people, you need to put yourself in other people's shoes, understand how would you feel and what would you have wanted if this had happened to you. And that should be the place from where your responses are coming. Lastly, you should be very sensitive to the non-verbal communication that a person is giving. Their gestures, their body language, their pauses, their expressions, and the tone are also important. At the same time, when you are communicating with people, you may say in your words, I am sorry, or I am, you might apologize to somebody, but then if your gestures, your body language, your pauses, your expressions, and your tone are not saying the same thing, the message will fall flat. Lastly, whenever you are going to give feedback to people, always use this technique of a praise sandwich. You start with something good that you observed in the task they did. Follow it up with the whatever corrections you want to make or whatever changes you felt should be put in as next steps, that what you can improve on. And lastly, again, end with praise. An example of this would be, you covered all the important points. Next time, maybe add a few infographics, but overall, we understood the topic well. So can you see that this is not sounding as criticism? If at the end of the presentation, somebody would say that there were no pictures in this presentation, there are no infographics, I did not have any visual aid, that will come across as criticism. On the other hand, putting it like this is constructive criticism. So if we follow all these techniques, they would decrease the day-to-day stress that we are experiencing. Overall, we need to use more adaptive coping mechanisms. So all these methods that we just discussed about managing stress are all adaptive coping mechanisms. Maladaptive coping mechanisms are strategies that will further increase the problem. For example, if somebody has yelled at me, I yell back at them, and then we have a big fight. That is a maladaptive coping strategy. Adaptive coping strategy would be to move away from the situation, make sure you are away from the person who is being aggressive. And then later, when the person is calm, you go back and have a discussion about it. Active coping is one step ahead. It is basically actively seeking resolution to the stress. A lot of times we don't use any coping mechanisms. We just allow the problem to come and go. We are not doing anything to resolve it. So what we need to do is adaptive coping and active coping. Coping strategies are learned by observing other people, and most often our parents and teachers and people around us. Whatever we see them doing, we also do the same things. But at the same time, we can all learn better adaptive coping strategies. Lastly, we should understand when do you seek help. It is important to realize that certain things are overwhelming you and you need more support to manage it. For example, if you are getting overwhelmed in childcare, you need to ask for help and assistance in that. Outsourcing some of your tasks. If you know that this is becoming too much for me, you need to learn to outsource some of the tasks. Lastly, talking to a mental health professional if things are getting out of hand. So once you go back from here, we discussed a lot of things, and some of you might think that, oh, these were very effective strategies and I would like to use them. I suggest you go back and try to create a stress log for the coming week. At the same time, create a plan to handle these stressors, and then again review and evaluate maybe after a week, how has all these strategies changed your life. Thank you. I think that would be the end of the presentation.